So my name is Dr. Rachel O'Connell and I'm founder and CEO of Trust Elevate, and we verify children's ages and we verify when somebody says they're the parent of a child. So we verify parental responsibility for a child. So we enable digital platforms to comply with the General Data Protection Regulation, COPPA, DSA, a whole raft of regulations that require them to know the ages of their users reliably, and also for very young users, like a 4-year-old can't read a privacy policy. So you have to verify who is the parent and they can act on behalf of the child to say yes or no to data processing. And we do that in a privacy preserving way. It's a zero knowledge way. And I'm thrilled to be here at the Age Tech Age Assurance Summit. And I'm the technical author of the PAS Age Checking Code of Practice, which is the foundational document to the age assurance standard that we're discussing here this week. So the challenges from a cross-jurisdictional perspective in terms of establishing age assurance, first of all, you need standards, and that was one of the very first things that we needed to address. And so I was recruited by the British Standards Institution to write that technical standard, PAS 1-96 Age Checking Code of Practice. And what we needed to do was understand that, for example, when adults are accessing adult content, there's a requirement to ensure their privacy, because somebody might have a very senior role in politics or their religion might be opposed to them accessing that sort of content. So the first question was, how do we develop a standard that details how you can do those checks in a privacy preserving way? And to do that, for it to be applicable globally, you need to ensure that you invite all of the countries that are involved in creating standards to get involved. So the PAS was the first document, and that's now evolved into an ISO standard, an international standard. So there are people from 116 countries involved in developing the age assurance framework, ISO 27566, and the meetings we're having this week affords us the opportunity to come together in person to think through all of the relevant little sections in the standard. What that means for industry is then there's a common standard that they can all apply to. For regulators, that's beneficial because they can test and check what methods a company is applying to comply with the regulation. And then also for end users, it gives a degree of certainty about the options that are available to them to be able to prove that they are the age they say they are when they're online. So in terms of industry and what they need to do to engage in this process, it's very encouraging that we have people from Google, from Microsoft, and from other companies actively engaged in creating those standards, right? And you need that level of industry engagement. And then in terms of, sometimes people get concerned about maybe there are different laws in different jurisdictions, but we have the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, which has an so it applies to all 27 member states, and it has an extraterritoriality clause, which means it applies globally. Similarly in the US, COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, that's what set the standard for platforms to require parental consent for anybody below 13, and anybody above 13 you don't need parental consent. So those legislations are kind of helping to create and different versions of them in South Africa. There are representatives from South Africa, India, from all around the world here today. So having that level of collaboration around the various pieces of legislation and the kind of harmonization in terms of the requirements. So you've got a drive towards harmonizations from a legal perspective, plus the technical standards that apply across all countries. It's technology agnostic, but that combination together, and with the input of industry and multiple stakeholders from NGOs, that means you then forge a way forward, and we finally will solve this problem. There's been an incredible amount of technology innovation in this whole space of identity management and identity verification. And age, of course, is an identity attribute. And through the standards work and through technological innovation, there are new ways in which you can verify or assert your age and have that confirmed. And okay. So in terms of technology innovation, there's a huge amount of innovation that's going on in the identity management and the identity verification space, and age is an attribute of your identity. So in that regard, there's been a plethora of companies that have mushroomed to meet this market demand for age assurance online. And critically, there's a huge also innovation in privacy enhancing technologies, and you can do this in ways that require zero knowledge proofs. So you don't actually reveal somebody's date of birth, and you can do it in a privacy preserving way. I think we're at the beginning of the development of standards around age assurance, and the next stage in the evolution is once you know the age of a user. If that user is 4 years old, there's a legal requirement on digital platforms, because they can't read a privacy policy, to obtain consent from the authorised holder of parental responsibility for a child. That sounds like a mouthful, but it's important because it's the parent or legal guardian, and it could be a foster carer or there could be a child in care. And we also need to think very carefully about refugees, for example. So we need to ensure that our age assurance and parental consent services and the standards are very inclusive, and are rights respecting. We need to respect the child's right to participate online, to get access to content, maybe content about mental health or sexual health, for example, that they may not want their parents to know about. So there are a whole plethora of things that need to be balanced in terms of respecting the child's rights. And also we as parents, we're just every day used to signing consent forms when your child is going on a school tour. If they join a swimming lesson, swimming classes, they need your emergency contact details. You need to say that you know that there's the risk of drowning or pools, chemicals. There are a whole load of risks. And that enables you as a parent to make an informed and explicit consent about the activities your child is going to engage in, which can be incredibly empowering. Can get fit and healthy from swimming, and it's great fun, but also there are some risks. Similarly, in an online world, there are risks, but there are huge advantages. So as we evolve in this whole space of developing standards, the next one beyond age assurance is around verifiable parental consent. And then after that, we will have to look at, well, how do we ensure that companies, when they're managing their report abuse mechanisms, that's where people tell you, this bad thing happened to me on your platform, can you do something? Those are resources that are not intelligently analysed at the moment, they're just responded to. So if we could have the intelligent analysis of those, then that would help to inform whether or not and to what extent the measures we're putting in place, such as age assurance and parental consent, actually have an overall net positive effect, and how we can improve that. So I think there's lots of scope in the trust and safety space for additional standards, and now we've got an incredible community that are willing and motivated to we're all ultimately trying to create a safer space for children and young people online.